Jai Om Vishnu Pad Shila Bhakti Pavan Janarda Maharaj Ki Jai.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Paragamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saguna Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitam Scha Om Jnana Timaranda Shahagyanajana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhishtam Supurakam Gurugadara Sisha Sambhushidam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Abhidam Ujwalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Premno Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Baranam Balarka Chilanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadekavaranam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubhadam Madeka Sharanam Yashishwara Shidaram Vanshikapatarubhyasya Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pranayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurata Vishay Namah. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. Also the translation into the English by Swarupananda Prabhu. And this is chapter 2, Sankhya-yoga, the constitution of the soul. And I'm beginning with verse number 70. Apuryamana machala pratishtam samudram apa pravishanti yadvat Tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kamakami. As the ocean remains full and unchanged, though many rivers and streams enter into it, the person of firmly established wisdom attains peace despite all desires entering him. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. As the ocean remains full and unchanged, though many rivers and streams enter into it, the person of firmly established wisdom attains peace despite all desires entering him. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. So what causes a person to be full and unchanged like the ocean? The ocean is so vast that nothing can disturb, no streams, no rivers that flow into the ocean can disturb it. It's such a vast quantity of water. Perhaps if there were a flood, those swollen rivers and streams, they could disturb many places, such as towns on the land, but when they come to the ocean, they will not disturb that ocean. So the ocean is compared to someone who's very full in himself or herself. That is full with devotion and satisfied within. So it's not that no desires or no desires can come into such a person, but the person will not act upon those desires. Just like the fullness of that person will not be disturbed by some desire. And that person is, as mentioned, vyavasayatmika buddhi, has unwavering intelligence and unwavering devotion. But Krishna here says, but a person who does nurture desires cannot know peace, because the senses will always dominate such a person. And so many constant desires will enter into everyone. And if they act upon those desires, they will never be of steady mind, they'll never be peaceful. And elsewhere Krishna says that the mind can be the greatest enemy or the best friend. But normally on a mundane level, where people are acting on their desires, the mind will not be their best friend. The mind will be their worst enemy. The mind will be subservient to the demands of the senses. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumans charati nishpriya nirmamo nirahankara shantim adhigacchati. Only a person who lives his life abandoning all desires, hankering, ego, and possessiveness can know real peace. Only a person who lives his life abandoning all desires, hankering, ego, and possessiveness can know real peace. So there's one of free from hankering, not acting upon one's desires, but nirahara, nirmama. So it says nirmamo. Let's see. Nirmamo nirahankara. Not dominated by the false ego, free from false ego of I and mine, in relation to the body and its attachments, having a divine relationship with the Supreme. So one attains peace because it's free from the false ego of dictations of I and mind. Where this I is an identification with the body, and mine is that sense of possessiveness and relationship. This is, I am this body, and these, so many things in this mundane world, they are mine. So a sense of I and mine, all based on false ego. So only a person who lives his life abandoning all desires, hankering, ego, and possessiveness, can know real peace. One has to be free from the dictations of the senses and the dictations of false ego and the control of the possessed by sense of ego and possessiveness. That only can come when, well, we talked about yukta vairagya. Yukta vairagya, that sense of I and mine, is not present when someone is engaged in yukta vairagya. He's utilizing, his renunciation really is that he's utilizing everything in the service of the Lord. So he's not thinking in terms of this is mine, rather he's seeing correctly that this, even other persons, everything is meant for the service of the Lord. So one's seeing in that way. And I mentioned many times, I remember, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was speaking about the dangers of kanak, kamani, and pratishta. Kanak, kamani, and pratishta. Kanak means desire for wealth. But the devotee doesn't fall prey to the desires for wealth because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says this will present a tough nut for someone who's a materialist to crack. And that is that all wealth is meant for Narayan. And why is all wealth meant for Narayan? Because he's the husband of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. So all wealth is meant for Narayan. And Kamini, all enjoyment, especially between man and woman, all enjoyment is ultimately meant for Krishna. And that all pratishta is meant for Gurudev. That anything I'm not taking credit, even if I accomplish something in this life in terms of my service. Rather, I'm giving all the credit to Gurudev. I'm just like a very small person, like a small retailer, and I'm getting something to negotiate with from Gurudev, who's a supreme wholesaler, giving me everything, whatever I'm able to utilize it is from Gurudev's warehouse, and ultimately I'm passing whatever profit, whatever credit comes from Gurudev's warehouse, the holy name, preaching, etc. All the credit goes to Gurudev. So when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying that all enjoyment, especially between man and woman, is meant for Krishna, all kamini is meant for Krishna, then someone said to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, well, we have our wives, and what is our position? And Srila Saraswati Thakur replied, you have no position at all. You have no position. Because it doesn't change the actual consideration that all enjoyment ultimately is meant for Krishna. That doesn't mean that we're stoic and without any enjoyment, but we are seeing that all enjoyment is meant for Krishna. Then there's so many ways in service to the Lord. The devotees are not sad, they're achieving that sense of Satchidananda. They're achieving some sense of happiness and relationship with that devotion. So only a person who lives his life abandoning all desires, hankering, ego, and possessiveness can know real peace. Esha Brahmi Stiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuyati Sthitva-vashyam antakalepi Brahma Nirvanam Richati Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuyati Sthitva-vashyam antakalepi Brahma Nirvanam Richati. O Partha, this is realization of the Absolute, attaining which a person is freed from the delusion of mundane existence. Even at the time of death, only a momentary attainment of this state leads one to the divine abode. O Partha, this is realization of the Absolute, attaining which a person is freed from the delusion of mundane existence. Even at the time of death, only a momentary attainment of this state leads one to the divine abode. So, as we mentioned, everything is a question of consciousness, of developing our original Krishna consciousness. And there is a reciprocal relationship with the Lord. So it is not just depending on one's own endeavor, even at the time of death, but also one, not just one's individual endeavor, but the Lord will also give his mercy to his devotee. Even at the time of death, one can pray to the Lord, and the Lord will extend his mercy to such a soul. So we're never in a difficult position in that sense. So, Oparta, this is realization of the absolute, attaining which a person is freed from the delusion of mundane existence. Even at the time of death, only a momentary attainment of this stage leads one to the divine abode. Iti Shri Mahabharate Shata Sahastriyam Samhitayam Vayasakyam Bhishma Parvani Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Sambade Sankhya-yoga Nama Dvitiyo Dhyaya. End of chapter 2, the constitution of the soul. From the conversation of Sri Krishna and Arjuna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, the yoga scripture of transcendental knowledge in Bhishma Parva of Sri Mahabharata, the holy scripture revealed by Srila Vyasadeva in 100,000 verses. So this is chapter 2, Sankhya-yoga. And I'll start with chapter 3, Karma-yoga, the path of action. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmane Gore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. This is Karma Yoga, the path of action. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, if you consider wisdom superior to action, why then do you urge me to engage in the violence of warfare? So if you consider wisdom superior to action, then why do you urge me to engage in the violence of warfare? That's action and of a very violent nature. Then if you consider wisdom as superior, why should I engage in this kind of activity? Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohaya siva me tad ekam vada nischitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. I am confused by your words. They appear to be ambiguous, sometimes supporting action and sometimes supporting wisdom. So please tell me which is the most beneficial path for me to take. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Vivida Nishta Puraprokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Dvivida Nishta Puraprokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. The Supreme Lord replied, O sinless one, I have described the two paths to be found in this world, the yoga of wisdom practiced by the realized and the yoga of selfless action practiced by those active in the world. Both paths touch the beginnings of devotional service since the ladder to the plane of devotion is one, while the practice is twofold according to the stage attained. So Arjuna says, O sinless one, I have Arjuna asks, so what is I'm confused by your words. They sometimes appear to be ambiguous, sometimes supporting action and sometimes supporting wisdom. So please tell me which is the most beneficial path for me to take. The Supreme Lord replied, O sinless one, I have described the two paths to be found in this world. the yoga of wisdom practiced by the realized, or jnana yogena sankhyanam, and the yoga of selfless action practiced by those active in the world, karma yogena yoginam. So here we have reference to yoga, the word yoga. Now, we've often heard that yoga means to establish a connection. So one person is establishing that connection through the path of jnana, or jnana yogena, jnana yoga, through the practice of jnana yoga, and the other is establishing that practice, is establishing a connection by the path of karma yoga. But regardless, these two paths can lead one to the practice of bhakti yoga, because one is establishing a connection, and ultimately, as Krishna says elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavam mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sadurlabha. Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavam mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sadurlabha. So, after many, many births in this world, one who is complete in knowledge understands Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, that Krishna is everything. Krishna is after many births, enlightened soul blessed with devotional association realizes that everything is of the nature of subordinate to Vasudeva, Krishna, and thus he surrenders unto me. Such a great soul is very rare. And karma yoga can lead one to offering one the results to the Lord, and in this way not being attached to the results. But in the path of bhakti, everything is, the action, the intelligence, everything is offered to the Lord. So both paths can ultimately lead to the platform of bhakti. The Supreme Lord said, O sinless one, I have described the two paths to be found in this world, the yoga of wisdom practiced by the realized, and the yoga of selfless action realized by those active in the world. Both paths touch the beginnings of devotional practice, since the ladder to the plane of devotion is one, while the practice is twofold according to the stage attained. So we will see that actually those who are serious, by good association with persons who are devoted, because if you're trying to establish a connection, that actually the connection means with the Lord and with the Lord's service. So that can be attained by the mercy of the Lord and his devotees. Na ye kaschid shanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrit karyate yavasa karma sarva prakriti jargunai. Na ye kaschid shanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrit karyate yavasa karma sarva prakriti jargunai. No one can refrain from activity for even a moment. Everyone is impelled to act by the modes of material nature. Thus, the person of impure consciousness should not disregard scripturally practiced purificatory works. No one can refrain from activity for even a moment, because the nature of the soul is to be active. But one will be engaged in activity as described previously, according to one's situation in the modes of nature. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smaran Indriyartam vimudatma mityachara sa uchate. One who externally restrains his hands, legs, and other senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects is a fool. Know him to be a hypocrite. One who externally restrains his hands, legs, and other senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects is a fool. Know him to be a hypocrite. And this will especially refer to those persons who maintain some artificial stance that they're renouncing all activities, but at the same time they have not controlled their mind. So while they're sitting tranquilly or sitting in some meditational pose or something of that nature, but their minds will be active and their mind will be dwelling on the objects of the senses. And Krishna says, one who externally restrains his hands, legs, and other senses of action, but whose minds dwell on sense objects is a fool. Know him to be a hypocrite. So if you're just renouncing all activity, but you can't control your mind, then Krishna says that that kind of practice is mityachar, a false, Mithya means false, or we can say Mithya achara, a hypocrite. Mithya means false activity. Just one is falsely presenting oneself. Mithya achara. Yastvindriyani manasa niyam yara bhaterjuna karmendriyai karmayogam asaktasa visishyate. Yastvindriyani manasa niyam yara bhaterjuna karmendriyai karmayogam asaktasa visishyate. O Arjuna, superior to one who, though married, has stabilized his senses, superior to one who, though married, has stabilized his senses by the mind, engaged in the yoga of selfless action. O superior is one who, though married, has stabilized his senses by the mind and engaged in the yoga of selfless action. Because sometimes we will judge things externally and just on the basis of seeing some image before us. But a person may present themselves as very holy and may be supposedly sitting in a yoga posture and very controlled, but that person is described as a hypocrite, whereas a person here mentions that even a person who may be married but has stabilized his senses by the mind and O Arjuna, superior is one who, though married, has stabilized his senses by the mind and engaged in the yoga of selfless action. So that is superior to a person who is supposedly very renounced but maintaining a false front, but that person's mind is always disturbed. Although that person may be sitting in a so-called yoga position, for instance, a lotus position with his legs crossed and staring at the point of his nose. But Krishna says one who externally restrains his hands, legs, and other senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects is a fool. Know him to be a hypocrite. Niyatam guru karmatvam karma gyayo yakarmana sharira yatrapi chate na prasidyed akarmana. Perform your prescribed duties, since to be active is better than idleness. Inactive persons cannot even maintain their existence. By giving up fruitive action and performing your obligatory duties, your heart will be purified. Surpassing the plane of renunciation, you will attain pure devotion, transcendental to the mundane plane. So this can be understood in relationship when Mahaprabhu is talking with Ramananda Roy. He says, how can one attain success in life? And first, Ramananda Roy expresses, well, act in the Varnashram Dharma, according to your position in life. You know, there's like 4 Varnas, Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras. There's 4 ashramas, sannyas, brahmachari, vanaprastha, and grihastha. So, Krishna, Ramananda Roy says, if you act within your within these 4 varnas, that will lead to perfection. And Mahaprabhu says, Eho bhaya age kohuar. He says this is very external. This really doesn't have anything to do with attaining perfection just by acting on a fruitive or mundane action level. So then questions, and then Arjuna says one verse. This verse is even on the top of our mandir, where he says, Sarvadharmam parityaja mamikam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. Arjuna says, if you just renounce all external things and surrender to the Lord, sarvadharmam parityajam, give up anything external, sarvadharmam parityajam mamekam sharanam vraja, and surrender to the Lord, ham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. Don't, Krishna then says, don't worry, you will come to you will attain the plane of perfection. And apparent, that's even on our mandir, on the stone there. But when Mahaprabhu hears that, he says, Eho bhaya age kohuar. He says, this is external. He says, this is external. So we always heard that this verse is so perfect. And why is Mahaprabhu telling external? And Srila Govindamars has explained, because if you supposedly renounced all activities and surrendered to the Lord, if you don't have the guidance of a superior Vaishnava, then you'll have no job. It means that you'll be inactive. You'll supposedly give up all your activities and surrender to the Lord, but you've given up all material activities, but you don't know what spiritual activities are. So therefore, Srila Govindamars said, even that verse, if it's not done in association with the guidance of a devotee, it's external, because supposedly you'll renounce everything and surrender to the Lord. But how can you surrender to the Lord? Because it's the nature of everyone to be active. And if you don't know what the plane of devotional activities are all about, then you'll have no job. That was Srila Govindamars' explanation. So here it says, perform your prescribed duties since, perform your prescribed duties, since to be active is better than idleness. Inactive persons cannot even maintain their existence. By giving up fruitive action and performing your obligatory duties, your heart will be purified. Surpassing the plane of renunciation, you will attain pure devotion, transcendental to the mundane plane. And obviously we see so many persons who want to renounce their material activities, but they don't know what they're supposed to do. They haven't had proper guidance. So then, because it's the nature of everyone to be active, they'll just wind up where they'll have to return to whatever the mundane activities they knew before. So here it also says, O Arjuna, superior to one who, though married, has stabilized his senses by the mind and engaged in the yoga of selfless action. Perform your prescribed duties, since to be active is better than idleness. Inactive persons cannot even maintain their existence. By giving up fruit of action and performing your obligatory duties, your heart will be purified. Surpassing the plane of renunciation, you will attain pure devotion, transcendental to the mundane plane. Of course, we don't necessarily want to act on the platform of prescribed duties. We have some activities that we perform that are apparently prescribed duties under the in the platform of engaging in devotion. There are some activities that are prescribed that we're supposed to be. They're called sadhana. Sadhana means there are activities that you do that are apparently prescribed duties, like coming into the temple, bowing down before the deities, worshiping the deities, singing songs. They appear to be like, just like prescribed, or what's mentioned here, prescribed duties. And we have, we have those activities that are performed just like apparently there's so many rituals on the platform. What is it? So they appear to be activities of vidhi. But they are to help us stabilize our mind. But we're really not interested in just engaging in vidhi marg, engaging in so many rules and regulations. Rather, what we want to do is be practicing devotion, bhakti. So there may be so many activities which apparently are prescribed that will teach us to remember the Lord and help us in that way. But I would say they're more on the plane of sadhana, that are sadhana, or engaged in sadhana. Okay. I'll read one more verse here. Yagyartat karmanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Yagyartat karmanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Selfless duty performed as an offering to the Supreme Lord is called yajna, or sacrifice. O Arjuna, all actions performed for any other purpose is a cause of bondage in this world of repeated birth and death. Therefore, remaining unattached to the fruits of actions, perform all your duties in the spirit of such sacrifice. Such selfless action is the way to begin devotional service. Such selfless action is the way to begin devotional service, gradually realize the presence of the Lord, and ultimately attain pure devotion, transcendental to the modes of material nature, nirguna bhakti. So this yagyartat karmano yatra, that means that you should offer all sacrifices to the Lord. So Arjuna, as selfless duty offered to the Lord, because actually yajna, there's the phrase yajna vai Vishnu. All yajna is meant to be offered to the Lord, not to be performed for any mundane action. If sacrifices is performed for any mundane reason, it's just the cause of bondage. What do we mean by bondage? We mean by karma. Karma just increases your bondage in this world. But here it's mentioned, yagyartat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Selfless duty performed as an offering to the Supreme Lord is called yajna or sacrifice. O Arjuna, all action performed for any other purpose is the cause of bondage in this world of repeated birth and death. Therefore, remaining unattached to the fruits of action, perform all your duties in the spirit of such sacrifice. Such selfless action is the way to begin devotional service, gradually realize the presence of the Lord, and ultimately attain pure devotion transcendental to the modes of material nature, nirguna bhakti. So sometimes persons worship demigods to gain some favors from the demigods, but they're kamaistaistarita their intelligence is lost by by kama, by some kind of, desire. Their so-called worship is dictated to by their own desire for enjoyment. So, sahayagya praja shristva purovacha prajapati anena prasavish yadvam esha vostvishta kamaduk. Sahayagya praja shristva purovacha prajapati anena prabhasishyadvam esha vostvishta kamaduk. In the beginning, Lord Brahma manifested the progeny of the world along with sacrifices. He instructed them thus: take shelter of this religious principle of sacrifice, prosper and flourish. May such sacrifice be the bestower of the things you desire. So I'm going to actually start with this verse. On Thursday, because it's the beginning of a series of verses. So anyway. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Hare Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Saradhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Saradhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunam Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunam Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunam Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunam H.I. Gosai Gauri Charana Bandhan H.I. Gosai Gauri Charana Bandhan Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran Jaoite Vignana Shabishta Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Muhitaradal H.I. Gosai Jar Muhitaradal Tasavar Para Renu Mora Panchagram Tasavar Para Renu Mora Panchagram Madir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Kadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Janame Janame More Ambilas Janame janame more ambilas. Echai gosai jabe braje koilabas. Jai gosai jabe braje koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Korila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Lord Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Jiv Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Tata Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Tata Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshidhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premzigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Bhagwat Ki Jai. Narottam Srinivas Shamananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vishvavarenya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda ki jai. Ganga Dev, Sri Navadip Dham ki jai, Sri Mayapur ki jai, Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai, Saparshada Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Kuladvip ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai, Sokal Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram ki jai, Ganga Devi ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju ki jai, Shri Purushottam Madam ki jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju ki jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Shri Nrsingadev ki jai, Bhakta Prabhara Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavanjanarda Maharaj ki. Jai.